There are hundreds of different build combinations you can pick from when it comes to making a dedicated build in Destiny 2. With Prismatic coming, these numbers are only going to grow to the tens of thousands if not millions of a variety of different build combinations. Today I'm going to go over 3 builds that I personally think are the best of the best that you should have ready for day 1 final shape. And since this is the last season of Destiny 2's Light and Darkness story, where I've covered over 10 seasons worth of build content on this channel, it's only fair that we make a slight change of things, because although I'll show you my top 3 builds, one for each character, I'm also going to give you guys a dim link to every single build I've created this season, all of which are in my loadouts as my main go-to builds. And you know what the best part is about these builds? Is that after spending hours upon hours optimizing them with Destiny 2 Armor Picker, I've finally made every build I have use no more than 3 pieces of armor per slot. And why is this good? Well, for 2 reasons, right? The first being that we don't need to have every slot completely filled with junk because of all the builds that we have. And the second is because we want to achieve a double or triple 100 stat build for every build using roughly the same armor pieces. Before, my armor was all over the place and it was just far too messy. Now I can safely throw everything in the vault and then pull everything back out by clicking on my loadouts to show what armor is being used for what build. Sounds complicated, but it's optimized and it's awesome. It's not perfect, but considering every build is using the least amount of armor possible, I think I've done a fairly good job. Anyway, I'm not going to get carried away. Dim links for all main builds are below, but now guys, this is your top 3 builds to have ready for Destiny 2 Final Shape Episode 1. So let me know what your best builds are down below, and now let's start building. Roll the intro. Now I've seen some incredibly powerful builds in Destiny 2 over the years, but if there's one build I had to keep for the rest of my Guardian's life, it has to be the Titan Strand Melee Build, featuring the Synthoceps arms. These have been an endgame option in Destiny 2 for a very long time, from using them with the Solar subclass as a Solar bonk build, to using them with Strand combining it with Banner of War. When you have an insane health return with an insane damage output, you're literally a god most of the time. And despite continuous nerfs to the Banner of War and Synthoceps, and the continued nerfs to Banner of War and Synthoceps again coming up in the final shape, it's still a very good build to use as a starting build for the final shape. With all the Titan builds out there, I'd still 100% pick Strand any day over any other Titan build. By using the Synthoceps exotic arms, we're providing our melees, glaives, swords and supers extra damage to enemies while surrounded. As a dedicated melee build, the aim is to always be surrounded so that we're always getting that extra damage buff, even with all the nerfs coming into play in the final shape. With Banner of War, we're defeating a target to activate the banner, which in turn gives us healing and further increases the melees and swords damage output with a stackable buff. And even though the timer we have for the Banner of War is being reduced, that won't really make much of a difference when you're using the build in those activities like Onslaught that just constantly have enemies roaming around. Essentially, the gameplay loop works by using your Strand Melee ability or swords to kill an enemy. This will then give you a Banner of War, and then further final blows of any type will extend that timer and increase its buff over time as you get more kills. With Synthoceps buffing our damage while surrounded, we can just melt most enemies in the game quickly. Using a 1-2 punch shotgun, we can further increase their damage by shooting and then meleeing right after, which will give you a huge DPS increase. Although most of the time you'll just run around using your melee on tough enemies and just killing everything else with an ad clearing weapon. When it comes to build crafting, there's a few things you're going to want on, which is our second aspect into the fray, so that we get melees back quicker when we have Woven Mail. And the way we'll get Woven Mail is by using Thread of Warding, where picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail. Every other part of the build doesn't really make much of a difference, but to optimize the build further, you'd want to have mods that help you get your melee and grenade abilities back faster, since you'll be using those all the time to cause complete chaos. And that there is your Titan Strand build. You can find a dedicated dim link and separate video down below if you want to see the full in-depth guide for it. When it comes to Warlocks, there have been a ton of good builds in the past, like the Starfire Protocol build, Phoenix Protocol, Sunbracers, and you get the point. But a majority of those good Warlock builds have been nerfed or are being nerfed in the final shape, with Sunbracers getting a lower duration of solar grenades, and Well of Radiance losing the majority of its damage resistance and benefits. It's hard to really place a Warlock solo build in the best builds placement. So for the purpose of a top tier build for the final shape, we're going to go with the Warlock's Contraverse Horde build. Since the Nova Bomb is getting a buff, and Contra also stands in a really good place right now, it's safe to say that running around in endgame content with infinite debuffing void grenades is really the way to go. It works as a solo build, but it also works as a team based build, providing the debuffs to enemies constantly and therefore allowing you to devour everything in your path. With our Void Warlock, we're going to be rocking the Contraverse Holds exotic arms. These Void Gauntlets will give us damage resistance while charging Void Grenades, and charged Void Grenades return grenade energy on hit, that being a 2000% recharge rate for just short of 2 seconds, which is usually enough to fill half of the grenade straight back. Since it has a 4-second cooldown and a charged grenade doesn't sit there for long enough, we'd want to use the Chaos Accelerant aspect and the Echoes of Remnants fragment, because these will allow your grenade to last longer, meaning that you can sometimes get a second activation if it's still causing damage to an enemy. Usually works perfect against bosses that don't move around much, or just groups of adds constantly coming at you, because you can throw grenades down one after another without really waiting around for another grenade to recharge. By using Feed the Void, we'll be able to get Devour when defeating enemies with our abilities, which also means instant health on kills and more grenade energy, which is a good top off to the last remaining energy that we need for any reason. The other fragments you'll want are Echo of Undermining to weaken enemies with the grenades, Echo of Expulsion to cause explosions, and Echo of Instability for volatile rounds if you're using void weapons. The super doesn't really matter, you can use what you prefer, but the grenades you want are the Vortex one. Usually the way you'd use this build is you'd start by charging a void grenade and then throwing it at a group of adds to get Devour and most of the grenade energy back. From there you would run and gun with void weapons and overall just keep using your grenades when you have them to weaken everything and clear the room quickly. It is best used in harder activities though, because you kind of want a grenade to keep causing damage rather than having it instantly kill enemies. For your mod choice, you'd be looking at going with any mods that help you get the grenade back quicker, as well as your super. So use things like Ashes to Assets in the helmet, a firepower to spawn orbs, as well as grenade kickstarts. Using the kickstarts might be a bit overkill, but it does help for the times where you have a bad throw and don't get a grenade straight back, so the downtime won't be as long when you're waiting for that next grenade charge. If you think Warlocks have had some good builds, well, you really haven't seen anything yet. With Hunters, there are a ton of amazing builds to choose from. You got the Golden Gun build with Infinite Radiant and Restoration, you got the Infinite Invis or Gyrfalcon's build, or you've got the Arc Melee DPS build, but one build that stands out the most for me is the Orpheus Rig Super build. Not only you're going to get tethers back at a stupidly fast rate so that you can debuff enemies constantly, but you're also going to get Devour, in some cases volatile rounds, as well as Infinite Invisibility. It's like combining my 3 favourite builds into one build. The build can be used almost anywhere and any time, whether you want to play this solo or play as a team, or you just want to use the tether for extra boss damage in dungeons and raids, you can do that. But the best way to use the build is to use the tether on groups of tough adds and mini bosses, since this almost always guarantees you that you get the majority of that super energy straight back. With our exotic Orpheus Rigs, we'll get ability energy for each target tethered by Deadfall, so just a simple single shot tether, then let all the adds get tethered to them, and then just kill them and you'll get a fair amount of super energy straight back. I tend to use the Vortex Grenade with Ashes to Asset mods, simply because this will give us a bit more super energy, and since Orpheus Rig caps out at 50% return energy, you'll have to find other ways to get the remaining energy, which would usually be through your grenades and mods that produce orbs of power. You'll want to use the Trapper's Ambush forward aspect, as well as the Vanishing Step 1 and a Gambler's Dodge. And by doing so, you'll be able to get an invis charge with the melee, as well as the dodge, but by dodging near an enemy, you'll get another melee charge, so that's 3 invis charges. And if you got high mobility, you'll be able to get that dodge back fairly quick as it is, so realistically, you'll have infinite invis if you use the build correctly and efficiently. Using the Echo of Starvation fragment, we can get Devour when picking up orbs, which is handy for survivability, but we can also get that by picking up void breaches created through volatile rounds with the Echo of Cessation fragment when paired with Echo of Instability. Just bear in mind that you will have to also use a void weapon if you're going this route. When you combine everything together, the gameplay loop is so smooth, because all you do is use your grenade, get kills with void weapons, pick up void breaches and get Devour, and then further kills just give you grenade energy, as well as health and super energy. And then once you have your super, you just use it and get half of that back depending on where you're using it. In things like Onslaught or Nightfalls, it's usually always consistent, so those are the good places to use this build in. When it comes to mod choices, you want to look at getting your grenade back quicker, since you'll use them to generate more super energy and get volatile rounds, but also mods that produce more class ability energy is also good, so that you have a higher uptime with having that invisibility. I think when it comes to choosing the best builds, it really comes down to what builds work for you and what gameplay loop works for you, other than just using the same build that everyone else uses. For me, these are the best builds that I main on all 3 characters that I just love using in endgame content, but what works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. There are a lot of good builds in Destiny 2, and as the Final Shape and Prismatic rolls out over the next coming weeks, I'm going to have a ton of new top tier amazing builds to use for the year of the Final Shape and beyond. So be sure to stick around because it's going to get wild, and until then guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you guys on the other side.